And I would like to invite Lois McGuire up. If I call you on a Saturday afternoon, don't answer the phone. Lois was kind enough to answer the phone, and you will quickly understand why. I want to tell you that this story we are going to share from the book of Luke is a powerful story of how it is Jesus reached into the places where people were marginalized and set aside. Anyone with any sort of physical ailment at the time of Jesus, it was assumed that that was God's judgment put upon them. And any woman at the time of Jesus would know that hers was not to raise her voice in public, hers was not to really be seen in public, and certainly hers was not to advocate for herself. And so we hear in this Gospel of Luke a story of how it is Jesus pays attention. Jesus sees this woman doubly outcast in her world, and he heals her. Now, he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over, and she was quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." And when he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight, and she began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue was indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath. So he kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, but not on the Sabbath day." But Jesus answered him and said, "You hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound for 18 long years, should not she be set free from bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said this, all of his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all of the wonderful things that Jesus was doing. May God add a blessing to the reading of this word. I'm reading a book that has been written by Melinda Gates. I don't know if anybody read it here. The book is called The Moment of Lift: How Empowering Women Changes the World. Gates and her husband Bill are passionate about seeking to impact the crippling impact of poverty, how it affects those who live in poverty, how that affects each of us when any one of us lives in poverty. And in particular, they're passionate about people who live in extreme poverty, and that is people who live on $1.90 a day. So in the book, Melinda Gates shares how it is that she came to know that if you search for poverty, you will find women who don't have power. If you explore prosperity, you will find women who do have power and use it. As she talked with women who live in poverty and as she listened to them, it became clear to Melinda Gates that in order to rise from poverty, among other things, women needed access to contraceptives. When women, she said, have time and space between their pregnancy, they're more likely to advance their education, earn an income, raise healthy children, and have the time and the money to give each child care and education that is needed to thrive. Well, Melinda Gates is a Catholic woman of faith. She's a woman whose faith is very important to her, and she knew that in advocating for the empowerment of women through their ability to make choices about their bodies, she was going to experience pushback from the church. And so she talked with many nuns and priests and spiritual advisors, as well as with her family and with God in prayer. And as she prayed and as she discerned, Melinda Gates came to ask this question: can a person of faith take actions that are in conflict with the teachings of the church and still be part of the church? She goes on to say this: in my case, the teaching of the Catholic Church formed my conscience and led me to this work in the first place. Faith in action, she believes, calls us to being in the margins of society, seeking out those who are isolated and bringing them back into community. So yes, she says, there is a church teaching against contraception. And there is another church teaching, which is love of neighbor. And love is more urgent than doctrine. When Jesus healed the woman bent over for 18 years, he went against the teachings of his faith. He saw the need of a marginalized human. He saw her, he touched her, he healed her. It would have made him ritually unclean in his culture, but he would not let them stop him. And as I have lived with this text all week, I couldn't get Lois and her story and her wisdom out of my heart, because she too was moved by her faith to step into a very different world and reach out and touch and learn and see and heal. So I wanted for Lois to be able to share with you what this healing of women and the change it provokes means.
So just a little background for those of you who don't know me. I'm a women's health care nurse practitioner and have been in women's health probably for about 40 years. So I have a strong feeling about women's health. And the story that Elizabeth asked me to share, so I'm just brimming here. I want to talk about Planned Parenthood. I want to talk about contraception. I want to talk about what she asked me to talk about. I'm just like, want to say so many things to you right now that, but I'll keep it to the women of Congo right now, because that's what she wants me to share with you, and it's a powerful, powerful story. In 2009, for those of you who know Eve Ensler, she is an activist. She wrote the Vagina Monologues, and she has developed a foundation called V-Day, and that stands for Violence, Valentine's, Vagina, and Victory. And so she is working on a project with the women of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And she's actually a patient of one of my friends. And that's not destroying HIPAA, because she's written a book about it. You can read it. It's a beautiful book. But she talked about the women of Democratic Republic of Congo. Congo is on the east side of Africa. And it's this incredibly beautiful, beautiful country. Remember, we have a family from Congo right now. The land is lush, it's beautiful, it's rich. And this was a very, very, very peaceful country until 1996. And that's when they learned that they had minerals that you need to, one particular called coltan, that you need to have computers. And think of how our world has changed with computers from 1996. I think that's about the time we got our first cell phone until now, where you aren't anywhere without your cell phones, your computers, and things like that. All of a sudden, this became a point of greed. And all these countries, including the United States, China, scurried into Congo, and now we have a situation that is horrific in this country. It is called the rape capital of the world. They use women as tools of sexual warfare to get what they want. These militia do. And these women are demoralized. They've gone through unheard, unimaginable things. Some of the stories are being tied to a tree for a month and being at the discretion of this militia for a whole month before they get pregnant, and then they are tossed aside or something like that. So it's a horrific story, unimaginable story of what happens. Eve heard about this story, and she interviewed these women along with a really powerful Congolese woman by the name of Christine de Schreier. And they sat down with the women and said, what can we do to help? And they developed what's called the City of Joy, which may sound funny that they would call it City of Joy, but it is bringing joy back to these women and empowering them. And Elizabeth wanted me to talk about how these women are empowered. They come to City of Joy for 6 months, and they are given love. They are healed emotionally and physically with therapy and learning yoga. They learn English. They learn how to meditate. They learn a skill. And they can go back into their world empowered and enriched and wanting to do something different. And it's amazing because they walk in the doors of City of Joy and they're angry. Things have happened to them that should never happen to anybody. They're ages 18 to 30 years old because they want to keep it the younger group so that they can make lifelong change for the country. And this is a grassroots organization, just like Elizabeth talked about, to empower women to change the dynamics of Congo. And right now they have about 1,300 women that have gone through. When they leave, they are singing, they are dancing. We went there twice. Once we went there when the women were building the City of Joy, and they actually physically built it themselves. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful campus that's all enclosed and safe for them. And then they are the ones who now run it. The initial people completely run City of Joy. They know what each other needs. Eve has empowered these women to take over. She asked them, what do you need to change this world? And they have changed the world for so many women. But I'm going to read to you what they have done. These women have danced, sung, learned their rights, performed plays, developed agricultural skills, and come to love their bodies again. They have become leaders in their communities. They are no longer stigmatized for being raped. These women are forces of energy and determination, entrepreneurs of small businesses, initiators of collectives, restaurant owners, farmers with new land, educators and advocates on sexual violences, volunteers in self-creating recruit network for new women at the center, journalists, immigration workers, tailors, students, herbalists. And then 42 are employed at World Farm, which is a self-sustaining farm. So the V-Day or City of Joy has a way to feed the women as they come in. To watch this, the first time we went, you saw these women and they just sit outside the hospital waiting to have surgery. They leak urine, they leak stool, it's awful. And they just sit there and wait and wait and wait for Dr. McGuire to do their surgery until their number comes up. And then they go to City of Joy if they're selected. And they come into City of Joy just having had a surgery or just totally physically and emotionally corrupted. And then they leave and they have a sense of self again and power. But the other part that I want to tell you about is the faith of these women. They are continually praying every day, and they go to church every day, and they sing God's praises every day. And it's amazing that they have this kind of faith when they've been through so much, but they don't let go. And I think that speaks to us in a great, great way. What other things would you like me to address?
How were you changed by being in that place with those people?
I think all of us that we went there to help Dr. McGuire with surgeries and bring new resources to him. He was doing incredible surgeries in the bladder without a cystoscope. And that's a that's a scope that helps him look at the bladder. He was doing it blindly, basically. He has incredible skills that none of our surgeons at Mayo have ever been challenged to develop, to be honest with you. So you see, that was our mission, was to go and help them. But what we did was a drop in the bucket. And what you see is a group of women and a group of leaders over there that are powerful. It was sitting in the same room with them. It's like sitting with somebody who has magic and power and faith. It was absolutely enlightening, and I don't know what the right word is for it. But yet you can't look in the eyes of these women and not be moved and not realize that we all deserve better, no matter what country we're from. We all deserve to be treated with love and respect. And I think it's made a difference when I work with my African patients. Just this heartwarming feeling towards them of what they've been through. And I just have so much respect for the African people, the Hispanic people now, the Muslim women. It's just changed my view on how to view women around the world and how important we all are. And if we're empowered, the changes we can make. These women are doing incredible things in Africa. I just have to tell you, it's amazing.
Thank you. So, Isabella, what was the line that you sang? The ends justify the means. And then you flipped it. The means justify the ends. So we believe as a people of Jesus Christ that we are called to see each other in the way that Jesus saw. We're called to have the courage to notice what's happening in the lives of those with whom we share everyday life and those we haven't even met yet. And to know that when the people of Jesus are willing to see, the world changes and we're changed. So I say again the line that Melinda Gates shared, that love is more urgent than doctrine, and it's more powerful than any border or skin color. We just have to be willing to see each other into wholeness. So thank you, Lois. Thank you, Lois. Thank you, God. Amen. I want to share with you something so mundane following what you've heard. I live such a life of privilege, and last week I felt bent over by despair. I watch too much news, I guess, and I'm reading too many newspapers, I guess. And it was starting to bend my soul over. And then I went to a leadership board meeting, and we read together from Eugene Peterson's paraphrase of the scriptures, the Sermon on the Mount. And what that piece says is, instead of blessed are the poor in spirit, Eugene Peterson puts it this way: blessed are those who have come to the end of their rope. With less of you, there is room for more of God. So what I want to say is that we are a city of hope here. And I was reminded that I don't have to do this work alone. That this world that God so profoundly loves, the world of the Amazon, the world of fires, the world of the shaking, that we are all feeling because the foundations of our life feel like they're being so jostled. Blessed are you when you feel like you're at the end of your rope. Because with less of you, there's more room for God. So this last hymn I chose because I needed to sing it. And maybe you do too. Will you rise as you're able?